The reactor chamber groaned like a wounded beast, the failing generators pulsing in erratic waves of light that painted the walls in hues of rust and shadow. Ward led the survivors, Rourke limping but unbroken, Stroud as cold and precise as ever, and Havelock dragging himself with blood staining his coat. The silence between them carried more weight than words could bear, for each man knew that every step forward was a step closer to death. Their enemy had been cut, its alien blood spilled across steel, but its roar still echoed in the marrow of their bones. Injured or not, it was alive and it was waiting. Havelock's breath rattled as he pressed one hand to a wound in his side. His voice trembled, though not with fear alone. "Do you understand what this means? It has human reasoning layered atop alien instincts. I gave it the best and worst of us." He coughed, his words breaking. "Our adaptability, our cruelty, even our will to win." Ward stopped, his eyes narrowing at the man who had unleashed this nightmare. "You gave it everything but a soul. That's the only reason it's still a monster." Rourke tightened his grip on his rifle, his voice edged with iron even as his body betrayed fatigue. "Talking about souls won't save us. Only bullets will." Stroud's voice cut through like a scalpel, calm and detached. "Not bullets. Ingalls. We corner it, force it into the coolant chamber. It's wounded, but its mind is sharper than ours. We'll need to think like prey to strike as hunters." The men moved in silence after that, each lost in the gravity of what was to come. The corridors narrowed, the walls sweating condensation that glistened under flickering lights. Ward felt the air thicken, not from heat but from the oppressive certainty that the predator was near. His instincts told him they were already being watched. The first strike came sudden and brutal. Stroud stepped forward to clear a junction, and in an instant claws reached from the shadows, dragging him sideways into the wall with bone-crushing force. He managed a single shot, the muzzle flash blinding in the dark, before his neck was snapped like brittle wood. The sound reverberated down the corridor. Ward shouted Stroud's name, but the silence that followed left no room for hope. Stroud was gone, his precision and cold logic erased in a heartbeat. The predator emerged partially from shadow then, its crimson eyes glowing, its movements slower but no less deliberate. Its chest heaved with the effort of wounds endured, yet its gaze remained fixed, unwavering, intelligent. It opened its mouth, and in a voice broken, jagged, but horribly human, it whispered, "Run, Captain." The imitation chilled Ward more than any roar could. It had studied him enough to mock him, to turn his own defiance into a twisted taunt. Rourke raised his weapon and unleashed a barrage, each shot slamming into the creature's torso. The predator staggered but pressed forward, its resilience defying logic. Ward pulled Rourke back, firing alongside him, forcing the monster to retreat toward the reactor chamber. Sparks rained from ruptured cables as the men pursued, driving it into the heart of the base where machinery roared like thunder. The chamber stretched vast and cavernous, coolant vapor rising in ghostly waves. The predator stood at its center, framed by the towering reactor core, a beast wounded but unbowed. Ward and Rourke spread apart, flanking with calculated desperation, while Havelock stumbled behind them, coughing blood. "Marcus," Ward hissed, "stay back." But Havelock shook his head weakly, his eyes locked on his creation. "No, this ends with me. It has to." The predator charged, speed unrelenting even in its weakened state. Rourke intercepted, slamming into it with sheer brute force. The two collided like titans, claws raking, fists pounding. Armor split and blood spilled, yet Rourke held firm, a defiant roar tearing from his chest as he drove a combat knife deep into the creature's side. It bellowed in rage, throwing him across the chamber, but his defiance bought Ward precious seconds. Ward seized the moment, firing a full magazine into the predator, each round tearing through its hide. The creature staggered, its body jerking with impact, but still it advanced, driven not by instinct but by something dangerously close to will. Havelock, clutching his wound, stumbled toward the predator. His voice cracked, desperate. Look at me. I gave you this life. I made you more than an animal. His words rang hollow, his plea unanswered. The predator turned, claws rising, and in a single sweep tore the scientist apart. His body crumpled without ceremony. His ambition extinguished in the silence that followed. Ward shouted in fury, charging forward with reckless abandon. The predator met him head-on, claws slashing, steel clashing against flesh as Ward wielded a steel rod torn from the reactor scaffolding. Sparks flew as the improvised weapon collided with claws. The two circled, predator and man, their battle echoing louder than the reactor itself. Rourke dragged himself upright, blood staining his armor. His breath shallow but eyes blazing. "Now, Captain!" he roared, pulling a detonator from his vest. He sprinted toward the predator, slamming into its side with the last of his strength. The explosion that followed rocked the chamber, shrapnel tearing through flesh and steel alike. The predator fell to one knee, half its torso shredded, yet still it clawed toward Ward, unrelenting, unstoppable. Ward, battered and bleeding, screamed with every ounce of defiance left in him as he drove the steel rod into its chest, pinning it against the reactor's coolant core. The hiss of steam and the roar of machinery swallowed their battle cries as the predator convulsed, its red eyes burning with rage, then with something else. For one terrible moment, Ward saw it look at him, not with hunger, not with malice, but with a recognition that was almost human. Respect, perhaps, or the faint shadow of understanding. Then its body slackened, its claws falling limp, its gaze dimming until the light faded entirely. Ward collapsed to his knees, every breath ragged, his body screaming in agony. The reactor chamber was littered with ruin. Rourke's charred remains, Havelock's lifeless form, Stroud's silence echoing in memory. He was alone, the last man standing amid the wreckage of hubris and defiance. The comms crackled weakly in his ear, static breaking before a distant voice emerged. "Captain Ward, report. What's your status?" Ward stared at the lifeless body of the predator pinned to the reactor, blood pooling in a dark halo around it. He felt the crushing weight of loss, the silence of absence. Yet his voice, when it came, was steady, carrying the strength of a man who had stared into the abyss and refused to break. "We're still here," he said. "We survive. Always." The comms fell silent again, but the words hung in the chamber like a vow. Humanity endured not because it was stronger, but because it refused to surrender. Ward rose slowly, shoulders squared despite the pain, and walked from the reactor chamber into the darkness beyond. The hunt was over. The war, perhaps, had only begun. The surviving men gathered in the armory, the metallic air thick with oil and the sharp sting of disinfectant that no longer masked the stench of blood clinging to their armor. Ward paced slowly before them, each step echoing against steel as though punctuating the grim tally of lives already lost. His presence anchored them, even as dread gnawed at the edges of discipline. Stroud sat on a crate, rifle balanced across his knees, eyes narrowed in thought rather than fear. Rourke stood near the blast door, chewing tension like iron nails, while Havelock leaned heavily against the wall, his coat torn, his expression pale with both guilt and obsession. Ward broke the silence. "We've seen enough to know how it thinks. It doesn't strike without intent. It learns every time it draws blood. We've got one advantage it can't copy." Rourke gave a humorless laugh. "And what's that, Captain?" "Our talent for dying slow." Ward's gaze was steady, sharp as the knife scar along his cheek. "No, our unpredictability. Can study our patterns all at once. But a man willing to gamble everything. That it won't understand." The words planted something steady in the group, though none dared call it hope. Stroud tilted his head slightly, his tone calm and measured. "Then we use ourselves as bait. Force it into a trap, detonate before it adapts." Ward nodded once, though his jaw tightened at the thought. "Exactly. But this time no wasted moves. Every shot, every step must matter." The room shifted as men began to check their weapons, the mechanical rhythm of loading magazines and chambering rounds giving order to chaos. It was ritual, the sound of warriors convincing themselves they were still in control. Havelock broke the rhythm with his trembling voice. "There's something you should know before you march into its teeth." He drew in a ragged breath, his words tumbling out like confessions forced from the condemned. "Project Revenant isn't just spliced with alien DNA. I grafted human neural tissue, war veterans, criminals, the strongest specimens I could salvage. I gave it fragments of our mind." His eyes darted between them, searching for understanding he knew he would not find. "That's why it learns faster than anything else. It's not just instinct. It's human cunning amplified." Rourke cursed and shoved him against the wall, rage flaring. "You gave it our mind. You made it think like us." Havelock winced but did not resist. "I gave it our strength, our capacity to adapt, to survive. You can hate me for it, but without that, it would have been just another beast. With it, it could have been a soldier." Ward pulled Rourke back, his voice controlled but edged with fire. "A soldier obeys. A soldier fights for something greater. This thing only fights for itself." He turned his gaze on Havelock, letting the weight of his words sink deep. "You didn't create salvation. You created a mirror with fangs." The silence that followed carried more weight than any argument. The Predator's humanity was not a gift. It was the most dangerous weapon in its arsenal. When the blast doors finally opened, the hunt began anew. Ward led from the front, flashlight beams cutting through choking dark, boots crunching against debris. The base was a labyrinth of twisted corridors and shattered panels, each intersection a potential ambush. They moved as one, weapons raised, breaths shallow, the metallic hum of failing generators their only companion. Stroud's voice broke the silence with clinical precision. "Pressure plates set. Claymores wired. We force it into Sector 7, close both exits, and ignite." Ward's reply was short. "Good. Stay sharp. It will know we're hurting it." Did. The Predator tested their defenses with inhuman patience. First, it tripped a pressure plate with a discarded helmet, detonating the explosive harmlessly. Then it circled back, triggering motion sensors only to vanish before a shot could be fired. It was bleeding them of ammunition, whittling their resolve like an experienced tactician. Rourke spat on the floor. "It's toying with us again." "No," Ward muttered, eyes scanning every shadow. "It's testing the perimeter, like we'd do to an enemy camp." The trap finally sprung when Stroud lured it with gunfire, his steady hands keeping the Predator's attention locked. The creature surged forward, impossibly fast, its form barely visible in the stuttering light. Explosions rocked the corridor, shrapnel ripping through its side. For the first time, a roar of pain tore from its throat. Blood, dark, thick, alien, splattered the walls. Rourke grinned savagely. "It bleeds." Ward fired into the smoke, each round deliberate, forcing the Predator to stagger back. Its movements slowed, though only for seconds. Then it adapted again, using debris as cover, darting between wreckage with lethal precision. It had learned the angles of their fire. The squad faltered as it closed in, claws tearing through steel as though walls were paper. Rourke shoved one of the younger men aside just as the Predator struck, its talons grazing across his armor. He countered with a barrage of gunfire at point-blank range, each shot carving deep into its flesh. But the creature did not fall. It retaliated with a swipe that flung him against the wall, the impact cracking the concrete. Ward dragged him back, but Rourke waved him off with a snarl. "Don't waste yourself, Captain. Finish the fight." The Predator hesitated then, standing at the edge of the trap's ruins, its chest heaving. It stared at Ward, blood dripping down its arm, but its gaze was not wild. It was calculating, deliberate, unshaken by injury. It tilted its head, and though no words came this time, the message was clear. It respected him. Ward's hands trembled around his rifle, but he did not lower it. That fleeting connection unsettled him more than the carnage. It wasn't simply studying them anymore. It was choosing, measuring, deciding who among them was worthy of its final confrontation. The creature leapt back into shadow, vanishing with the speed of thought. The silence left behind was heavier than the gunfire that had preceded it. The survivors regrouped, battered and shaken, their trap reduced to rubble. For the first time they had wounded it. For the first time they had drawn blood. And in that blood, however briefly, they found the thread of defiance to cling to. Ward steadied himself, wiping grime from his face. His voice sharp and resolute. "It can be hurt. That's all we need to know. If it bleeds, we can kill it." The men drew breath at those words, their shoulders straightening, their eyes sparking with the faintest ember of belief. Even Stroud's impassive face flickered with something close to resolve. But deep inside, Ward knew what the predator had already shown him. Blood was not defeat. It was adaptation. And if tonight had taught them anything, it was that each wound they dealt only made the creature more dangerous. Still, he clung to the one truth that separated men from beasts, the single edge humanity still possessed. They could choose to fight even when the outcome was certain death. As they prepared their weapons again and pushed forward into the ruins of the base, the corridors hummed with tension, every echo a question, every shadow a possible end. Somewhere ahead, bleeding but unbroken, the predator waited. And when they met again, there would be no traps left, no walls to hide behind. Only man and monster, locked in a battle that would decide whose design truly defined survival. The blackout threw the base into chaos. Klaxons wailed, echoing through steel corridors, and the men scrambled in disarray. Rifles clutched tight as shadows seemed to stretch and twist with each pulse of emergency lighting. Ward's voice cut through the din, sharp as a blade. Lockdown protocol. Containment first, survival second. His orders gave the panic structure, pulling frightened soldiers into the rhythm of trained response. Yet every man knew the truth. They were no longer guarding the predator. They were prey. Stroud was already on one knee, rifle sight raised, his expression unmoving. He was trained for silence, for the patience of glassy-eyed focus, but even he could not ignore the unnatural presence in the dark. He muttered without looking up, "It's moving. Too fast." His words carried a measured weight, not fear but certainty, and the squad tensed. From above, in the vents, a metallic scrape rang out. It was not random noise but deliberate, the sound of claws dragging slow to unnerve. Ward knew it for what it was, psychological warfare. The predator was teaching them fear, dissecting their composure before it dissected their bodies. Rourke swung his rifle toward the ceiling. "It's playing with us." The sound vanished. The silence afterward was worse. Every man's heartbeat seemed to fill the void. Then it struck. From the shadows at the far end of the corridor, the predator lunged, a blur of pale muscle and unearthly speed. One soldier screamed as talons raked his chest, cutting through armor as if it were paper. Another fired, bullets sparking off the steel walls, but the creature had already moved, vanishing into another shaft before its victim's body had even hit the ground. Blood steamed against the cold air. The squad tightened formation. Ward forced calm into his men's veins with his voice. "It's not invincible. Keep your heads. Stay tight." But his eyes betrayed what his voice denied. He had seen skilled killers, alien and human, but nothing that moved like this. The predator struck again minutes later, this time using sound. A voice echoed faintly from the next corridor, broken, hollow, eerily human. "Help me." The cadence was almost convincing, but Ward felt the lie in it. It was bait. One soldier moved instinctively toward the sound, and before Ward could stop him, the man disappeared into the hallway. A scream rang out, cut short by the wet crack of bone. When they reached the corner, they found only his rifle, bent in half. Havelock stumbled into the group then, sweat pouring down his face, eyes alight with both terror and fascination. He spoke quickly, his words trembling. "It's adapting faster than I anticipated. Every move you make, it learns. every tactic it absorbs. Ward grabbed him by the collar, shaking him once. Then you've unleashed something we can't kill. The doctor swallowed hard, unable to argue. Another soldier fell, dragged into the ceiling vent by unseen claws. Blood dripped onto Ward's shoulder as he raised his eyes, catching only a flash of red gaze before it disappeared again. Stroud fired upward, but the rounds punched only empty steel. The men were unraveling. Rourke barked at them, voice sharp, forcing them back into line. You panic, you die. Eyes forward. Triggers ready. His steadiness was iron, but even he felt the crushing weight of futility. The predator was not random. Ward began to see the pattern, piecing it together with a soldier's intuition. It targeted officers, leaders, the ones who issued commands. It wasn't thinning numbers blindly. It was breaking structure. First it isolated. Then it dismantled. And then it would kill with precision. It wanted him next. The thought sank into his gut as the group pushed deeper into the base. Each corridor was a tomb waiting to be filled, each door a stage for slaughter. In one corridor lined with broken light fixtures, Ward caught movement at the far end. A shape too tall, too lean, its skin catching the glow like something carved from ivory. The predator stood watching them, not attacking, just staring. For a moment, Ward and the creature locked eyes again, and time slowed. He could feel it thinking, testing, judging. Stroud raised his rifle. I can take the shot. Ward raised his hand. Hold. The predator tilted its head, almost curiously, then slipped into the shadows. The corridor was empty once more. Rourke cursed under his breath. Why the hell didn't it strike? It had the chance. Ward didn't answer. He already knew. It didn't want an easy kill. It wanted to measure them first. It wanted to save him for last. Behind them, the sound of shredded metal erupted as the creature tore open a bulkhead door. Alarms blared, red light spilling across their faces as the predator's roar thundered through the halls. Men fired blindly, filling the corridor with muzzle flashes. Screams followed, short, brutal, ending in silence. Ward and the survivors retreated through a set of blast doors, sealing them shut with a grinding roar of hydraulics. They pressed their backs against cold steel, panting, the stench of sweat and blood thick in the air. Silence followed, broken only by the faint sound of claws scraping against the other side of the door, slow and patient like a promise. Stroud lowered his rifle, his expression unreadable. It's not hunting for food. No, Ward said, his voice heavy. It's hunting us for the same reason we train. To learn. The words settled over them like a shroud. For a moment, even Havelock had no response. His brilliance eclipsed by the grim reality of what he had made. The predator wasn't just killing, it was studying command, tactics, and human behavior itself. Each death made it sharper, more dangerous, more human in its cruelty. Ward stared at the sealed blast door, hearing the faint scrape of claws fading into the distance. He knew it wasn't retreat. It was repositioning, calculating, preparing for the next strike. The truth pressed into his bones with the weight of inevitability. This was no longer a containment breach. It was war, and the enemy had just begun to understand them. Ward's hand tightened around his rifle, and though fear clawed at the edges of his resolve, his voice steadied his men. We fight smart or we don't fight at all. This thing thinks it knows us. We'll show it what being human really means. But in the silence that followed, with the shadows of the base stretching endlessly before them, every man knew the fight ahead would not be survival in the usual sense. It would be a reckoning. And somewhere in the dark, the predator waited, its crimson eyes burning with anticipation. Welcome back to my channel. Subscribe for more HFY sci-fi videos. Thanks. So the story begins. The year was 2147, and the earth had grown weary of its wounds. Cities had been rebuilt on skeletons of steel, but the scars of alien invasions still carved themselves into human memory. Beneath the frozen tundra of the north, where storms buried the land in silence, an installation lay hidden. Its name was never spoken outside closed channels. Orion Blacksite. Within its steel corridors, men toiled under fluorescent light, men who had given their lives to the idea that survival was the only currency left worth bleeding for. Captain Elias Ward stood near the reinforced glass of the observation chamber. His reflection fractured against the glare of sterile lamps. He was a man carved by conflict, his face marked with a scar that ran from temple to jaw, a memento from an alien blade years before. His shoulders carried the weight of every soldier he had buried, and though his eyes were sharp, they carried the fatigue of someone who had seen too many dawns soaked in blood. Tonight, he looked down at what he feared could become humanity's final mistake. Behind the glass lay the figure, a creation too perfectly sculpted to be human and too primal to be machine. Muscles coiled beneath pale, reinforced skin, veins pulsing with engineered precision. Its chest rose slowly, deliberate, as though each breath was calculated. Even in unconscious slumber, it radiated menace. The eyes, closed for now, were said to glow when open, an unholy red glint of engineered purpose. Dr. Marcus Havelock entered the chamber with the urgency of a man certain of his genius. His white coat was spotless, his expression a mixture of pride and defiance. He carried the air of someone who believed the world was too slow to follow him. Ward turned, his posture stiff, his jaw grinding with barely concealed contempt. "You've built a monster," Ward said, his voice low, gravelly, the voice of command stripped bare. Havelock's lips curved into something between a smile and a sneer. "I've built salvation. You see a monster because you're too bound to the past, Captain. You measure war in scars and tombstones. I measure it in progress. This creature is our answer to extinction." From the corner, Sergeant Kane Rourke leaned against the steel wall, arms folded, broad and square-shouldered. His face bore the hardened lines of a soldier who had seen enough battlefields to stop believing in promises. He glanced at the slumbering predator and then at Ward, speaking with a voice that carried dry skepticism. "Progress, Doc, doesn't usually come with claws." Lieutenant Jonah Stroud entered next, his footsteps crisp, his eyes narrow. He was younger, but his presence filled the room with a cold, disciplined intensity. He said little, watching the figure behind the glass with the kind of calculation only a sniper possessed. Every detail mattered, angles, timing, possibility. His silence was louder than Havelock's pride or Ward's warnings. Havelock gestured grandly toward the figure. "Project Revenant, a fusion of alien resilience and human intellect. Faster than any soldier, stronger than any exosuit, adaptive beyond calculation. It will turn the tide of war." Ward's hand tightened into a fist. "It will turn on us. That thing wasn't born. It was designed. No loyalty, no conscience. You're gambling with the lives of every man on this base." The predator's chest rose again, deeper this time. Ward felt it, an awareness as though even in its dreamlike state it could hear them. Its eyelids twitched, and the faintest shift of a finger curled against the restraints. Alarms whispered faintly in Ward's mind, instincts sharpened by decades of combat. He remembered the way enemy commanders tested human weaknesses, probing for fractures in resolve. This creature wasn't simply a weapon, it was a mind sharpening itself for war. Rourke's voice cut through the silence. "I don't like the way it moves, even asleep. Like it's waiting." Stroud finally spoke, his tone calm and precise. "It's measuring us. Predators don't waste energy, they prepare." The words lingered in the chamber. Havelock scoffed, dismissing their unease. "You speak like fearful children. This is controlled. I designed every strand of its DNA, every neural pathway. It exists because of us, and it will serve because it must." Ward's eyes hardened. "You think you built chains, but all you've made is hunger. Hunger doesn't obey." The predator's eyes snapped open. A pulse of red cut through the chamber's sterile white light. Ward's breath froze as he met its gaze. Feral intelligence stared back at him, calculating, unblinking. A ripple ran through its body, subtle, restrained by restraints too advanced to break but never meant for something this cunning. The base's technicians murmured, nervously adjusting controls, but the predator tilted its head, and for a fleeting moment, Ward swore it understood them. Then it did something none of them expected. Its lips parted, and a guttural whisper emerged, an imperfect mimicry of human cadence. "Captain." The words slithered through the chamber like poison. Ward stiffened, while Havelock's eyes widened in astonishment. "Remarkable," the scientist muttered, stepping closer. "Already learning. Already responding." Ward shoved him back. "Already hunting." The chamber lights flickered. For a heartbeat, shadows swallowed the room, and when they returned, the predator strained against its restraints. Metal groaned, hydraulics hissed, and warning sirens lit across control panels. Ward barked orders, his command voice snapping through the chaos. Rourke grabbed his rifle, Stroud leveled his sights on the glass. His finger steady, eyes unblinking. Havelock, instead of fear, radiated excitement. "No, don't. This is evolution taking its first breath." The predator's gaze fixed on Ward again, unyielding. Its lips twitched in something too close to a smile. Ward felt it, an unspoken promise written in silence. It would come for him not by chance but by design. Then the alarm screamed. Power surged. Restraints buckled. Sparks erupted across the panels. The predator's roar filled the chamber, primal and thunderous, shaking dust from the ceiling. The reinforced glass cracked. A hairline fracture spread like lightning across its surface. Ward's heart pounded, his instincts already screaming the truth no one wanted to hear. It wasn't if the creature would break free. It was when. And when it did, it would not stop. The lights died, plunging the chamber into darkness, leaving only the burning red eyes of the predator glowing in the void, promising a hunt that had only just begun.